Hey everyone, great to see all of you. Are you working out those pregame jitters? I got to say the intensity has not quite hit me, but then again, I have yet to really watch anything, partake in anything. This is my first thought about the game today. Went to breakfast with a friend, was taking care of other things. So I'm just diving into it right now. I got to say, though, I did catch the Tom Rinaldi story on JJ McCarthy and his high school buddy, and that was rather touching. So away from the football, yes, an inspirational and touching story there from one of the very best in Tom Rinaldi. All right, Ohio State, Michigan. We need to talk to all of you. So let's get it done and let's go right to the phone lines because I want to hear from you. Mike's here. Mike, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Just got a busy Thanksgiving weekend because I've got a shoulder replacement surgery Monday morning up in
Oh,
Georgia.
okay.
And I've had a final paper I've had to write for the class I'm in. Now I'm going for my second master's degree.
Oh,
I need to
wow.
get that done before my surgery because I'm not going to be able to type for a while. So,
Wow, you do have a busy portion of life going on right now.
yeah, I'm just trying to get all my ducks in a row, but got to catch the game.
Shoulder replacement. So hopefully that goes well. So our thoughts and prayers go out to you for that. When is your surgery?
It's Monday morning.
Okay.
It's up in Macon, Georgia, about 4-hour trip from here.
Okay.
So I'll be spending Sunday night in a hotel up in Macon, Georgia. But that means I'm not gonna be able to catch the panel discussion tomorrow. But my thoughts will be with everybody that's participating and everybody in the panel and everybody in the chat room that's wanting to lash out all their feelings, good or bad, about the game.
Well, we know that we've got enough Ohio State fans and enough Michigan fans that regardless of the outcome, it's going to be flying back and forth.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have today, like I say, in between putting up the final touches in my paper, hopefully catch the post game with Diadamo and all them with some happy feelings.
Yes, I know that you are. Well, do you have any final thoughts or feelings about this one?
I'm just hoping for a good game. Hopefully, Sharon opens up the playbook a little bit more, and we see a little bit more on offense, less conservative. Just play to Michigan's full potential. Everybody healthy, no excuses either side, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I'm expecting a really good game, but the last 2 years didn't turn out to be a really good game, competitive in the fourth quarter as Michigan dominated in the fourth quarter. They were really good games up until the last 6 or 8 minutes, but I'm expecting it to be closer, but it may not be. Uh, Ohio State has a lot to prove. They have a lot to prove in the physical uh, department on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
And the one thing is that it looks like Travion Henderson. It looks like he's about as close to 100% as you're going to get. So
Yeah.
that's going to really open up the ground game. I honestly expect Day to be looking more. I called it like a 60-40, maybe even 65-35 run. Kind of use the the Marvin Harrison and the the stable of wide receivers as kind of like a decoy, and just kind of bully up front or attempt to.
Yeah, I think he wants to get a real good feel for and measure how prepared Kyle McCord is for this. And the best way to do that is to give him easy throws. He's going to have to make difficult throws at some point. It would shock me if they are able to navigate an entire game against Michigan and that he's not going to be under duress and in stressful situations that he needs to deliver. But the later in the game that can happen with the score on their side, I think, yeah, Ryan Day, if he can lean on the running game and throws that are that require less thought process and duress and less tight windows, and then kind of gauge where is Kyle McCord at this point? Is he delivering? Is he look sharp? Okay, well then maybe we can open it up a little bit more. But if not, and it's still a close game and we're still in this, well, then I'm going to continue to rely on the ground game.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious to see how McCord holds up. I'm guessing the key matchup I want to see is our defensive line interior versus your guards, because I consider your guards kind of the strength on your offense. Your tackles are a little sketchy, and I kind of see Hinsman, your center, is kind of a liability. But your guard play, I absolutely no complaints about that. So I kind of want to see if we can get an interior rush and kind of put McCord outside the tackle box.
Yeah, and of course the pass protection is even more severe and more important on the Ohio State side because he's no JJ McCarthy in terms of escapability.
And
so there is that.
I anticipate him, getting a good chunk of pressure throughout the game. So I kind of see how he holds up. I mean, it's not like he has a lack of targets out there.
Yeah, and the guys that complement Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka in particular, of course, he's been injured. He's just working his way back. How healthy and how ready is he, I think, is huge in this because and then we'll see how Michigan treats Marvin Harrison. If they're obviously going to shade coverage in his direction, but how much do they trust a corner, whether that's Will Johnson or Mike Sanderstill, who I think are both exceptional corners? And then how much can Ohio State, can McCord play off of Marvin Harrison? He tends to lock in on him, which is not necessarily a horrible thing most of the time, but still McCord needs to be able to trust his other guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did pretty good at, holding Harrison back about as far as you could get. But like I said, I don't think their offensive game hinges on him as much as it does Henderson and Stover.
Henderson certainly. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that McCord's going to have enough time to just really chuck it downfield. He's going to have to do a lot of checkdowns, rely on Stover a lot in the passing game. I don't think this is going to be one of these air raid attacks. Not with the pressure we're going to bring.
Oh, I don't think it is. But if Marvin Harrison's not a huge factor in this game, that's not good for Ohio State. They need to get him the football, regardless of whether they're chucking it downfield, or if it's just, different types of routes that they're giving him.
And I'm a little bit more worried about, I'm kind of wondering how we're going to handle speed wise, because I know that Ryan Day has been kind of up in the jet sweeps and the stuff like that. It's like I'm worried, if we're going to be able to hang laterally with the speed of Ohio State receivers.
The balls that Marvin Harrison caught against Penn State that kind of broke their back were pretty short drags across the middle. So he's not just a guy that they're going to be looking for, downfield.
Yeah, I like to think that we can, kind of limit the vertical game, but I just want to see how it plays out. I got a hunch on how Ryan Day is going to address this, so hopefully Minter's up to the challenge.
Yeah, and Michigan's had another week to work on the whole Sharon Moore approach to the game, and how much that mirrors what Harbaugh wants, and all of that. All the decisions can't be pre-planned or pre-made for him, but I'm sure that they comb through all sorts of situations and what Harbaugh would call and where he would make the determination on punt versus go for it, and all the things that a head coach does to make this as much of a Jim Harbaugh coached game as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how they're going to play JJ, because I've heard the headlines, McCarthy hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in the last 3 games. And I think there's a lot of people thinking that, him not doing it means he can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's the most overrated statistic that I've been hearing for the last few weeks, is that JJ McCarthy hasn't thrown a touchdown in a month. I don't think that has mattered. They did play one tough game in that span, but the other games were all blowouts. True, he hasn't played as well, although this QBR statistic that's going around about him being in the mid 50s in the last, I heard 3 games. But if you go back to the Purdue game, his stats, and I don't know how they compute to a QBR, were good. And against Penn State, he did, he completed 7 of 8 passes. So now you can complete passes that aren't effective in the QBR statistic because it's such a different number and a different formula and calculation than the rating. But I'm not seeing where, aside from the Maryland game, yeah, JJ was very hit or miss in that game. To me, he's only played 1 off game.
Yeah, Bowling Green.
Well, I'm thinking more the Maryland game.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to throw in Bowling Green. I mean, 3 interceptions. That's
but I'm thinking more recently, just in regards to when was that game 3?
2 or I think it was.
Yeah, that was game 2 or 3. We're at game 12. So.
Yeah, and Maryland's just been kind of our bugaboo the last couple of years. I mean, it was I think it was a 7-point game last year, and that was in Ann Arbor. Now it was kind of a false because we had a 15-point lead with less than a minute left, and so we kind of what I would call a garbage time touchdown. The only way they could have won is if just billion to 1 odds happened, but Maryland's still been a problem with us, and like I said, I've noticed they gave you guys problems too. You guys played them in Columbus and it was tied at the half and a 3-point game in the third quarter. Now it kind of got blown open towards the end, but Maryland seems like a tougher team than 6-5 would allow you to think they would be.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, they have played Ohio State and Michigan well. But, man, they've let down against some pretty bad teams.
Yeah, they had some real head scratchers, and Penn State just tool shedded them. So you never know which kind of Maryland you're going to get. It seems like both Michigan and Ohio State got the better part of Maryland, while Maryland played down to some inferior competition.
Yeah, that's 4 games in a row against Ohio State and Michigan that they've shown up and played relatively well and close to a 4-quarter game, close to it. Most of the time. So if you take those results, which that's quite a few results, 4 games in the last 2 years with close to the same team. Of course, they had personnel changes and lost a lot of guys like every other team, but they've basically had the same team the last 2 years. And for them to throw up those kind of results 4 times against the 2 best teams in the conference by far, that shows that they should be better in the other games. They should be beating Indiana and Rutgers by 3 touchdowns. So yeah, that's a disconnect, no doubt.
Oh yeah. And I'm kind of putting all our chips onto this game because once 2024 hits, we're losing a lot of guys and the schedule gets, exponentially tougher. Whew.
Yeah. Especially for you guys. It does for everyone. We went through everyone's schedules next year and it gets, at the very least, there's a few teams in the Big Ten that skate by and their schedules are just about the same, but it's decidedly tougher for everyone. And yes, Michigan's schedule probably takes the biggest jump of anybody.
Well, it has the most room to jump because our out of conference. UNLV is turning out to be decent, but overall our conference is pretty shady.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment until postseason play, because if you look at the conference, again, once the conference games start to be played, every conference goes 500. And I understand that the likes of anybody past Iowa looks pretty dismal in the Big Ten, but the conference is 6-7 against the other 4 conferences. And until I see a little bit more, I'm not going to declare this as a down year for the Big Ten.
Well, and the other thing is, you kind of wonder because, the SEC's out of conference Power 5 record this year has just been dismal. But to hear some people think they're still the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to college football.
Well, I made the statement last night. I think the real MVP likened it to Apple stock. If Apple stock takes a dip, and I thought that that was a fairly decent analogy. Uh, yeah, the SEC is not the best conference this year. It is not the best conference. It cannot be skewed or manipulated in any way to be justified as the best conference to be ranked that way. And I don't remember where I had them in my last rankings, but it was nowhere close to number one. But I still believe it's the best conference. So those two things can exist at the same time. I believe it's the best conference, but they just didn't play like the best conference in 4 or 5 games. And that's all we've got to go on.
Yeah, and there's some teams that just, they're kind of on a doubt slide. I mean, I think the fact that, Missouri is 10-2, I think they're 10-2, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit of an indictment personally on the SEC. I want to see what happens if Missouri makes a New Year's Six game, because I don't envy them.
Yeah, I really don't know. They have one non-conference game, and they beat Kansas State, and they beat them by a whisker. They had to kick a 61-yard field goal to do it, so that's a really good win. But they were at home, and they won in basically what was a tie game.
Yeah.
So that's about what I think they are, Kansas State. Yeah, I don't think they're Penn State. Like, I looked at the bowl projections yesterday, and they could be playing whoever doesn't come out of the Pac-12, Oregon or Washington. They could be playing Texas if they got left out of the playoff. They could be playing Penn State. Yeah, until proven otherwise, I don't think that they're at that level.
Yeah, I don't see a team you just named that wouldn't be at least a touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I'll go ahead and set aside for somebody else to come in. Just thanks for having me and hoping for a good game.
Well, Mike, I hope everything goes well with everything. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, always. I'll always be here as long as I can make it.
Thanks, Mike. We'll see you.
Go Blue.
Buckeyes and Wolverines coexisting even just minutes before the game. How about that? All right, we've got Charles is letting us know here. Did Michigan fans boycott game day like they promised? I don't know how many of Michigan fans actually promised that, but yeah, I did see the talk out there about Michigan fans upset with ESPN's handling of the scandal, the investigation by the NCAA. There's an investigation by the NCAA. I don't know what, for as many issues as I've had with ESPN at times, I don't know what they're supposed to do with that. They're supposed to cover it. All right. Michigan fans chiming in. 97.1 The Fan. I don't know where that is, but I got to think that there's like 1,000 radio stations out there called The Fan. Chris, good to see you. Moose says, I think with two elite, I think it will be low scoring. He's got Michigan 27-17. John is saying Bruce Feldman. So this has been out for quite some time. I talked about this, mentioned this the other day. I was asked about it. And yeah, I had heard this from a number of people about a week to 10 days ago. That, yeah, if Ohio State loses, maybe Ryan Day goes to Texas A&M. There would be less pressure there. There would, I'm sure, be more money. Not that Ohio State couldn't pay him whatever Texas A&M was going to pay him, but Texas A&M. I saw some ridiculous figures like $16 million. And Ryan Day is an excellent coach. I would like Ryan Day to stay as the Ohio State football coach. He's an excellent coach. He's great. He's won 40 consecutive games against everybody but Michigan in the Big Ten. He's been the most successful coach in the Big Ten by far during his tenure. But if he leaves, Ohio State has certainly been able to move on to the next coach for the last, over 70 years, and has always been an elite program. At no time during those 70 years have they not been elite. Now, they did take a little stumble there in the late 80s, early 90s, but I did a video a couple of years ago, basically, because I was asked when various programs had been down. And of course, we got to define what does down mean. And to me, I defined it as not competing for your conference championship, not going into the final weekend of the season, competing for your conference championship, having a chance to win the conference championship. For Ohio State to do that 3 consecutive years, you got to go back to pre-Woody Hayes. Yeah, that'll be something that we will certainly cover if that comes to pass. I would put the odds against it, but I'm not Ryan Day. And maybe he would think, okay, I don't want to hear this for a year. I could in no way fault him. And Michigan fans would have a field day if he moved on after losing a 3rd consecutive game to Michigan. I'll say he couldn't beat us. He's gone. But you know, when you're that good at what you do and you've got that many options, so be it. He's got that many options. The number 1 job in the country open right now, it's not even close, and will be the best job open, regardless of what happens on Black Sunday, Black Monday. We're probably coming up on some firings this weekend to be announced very soon, that Texas A&M is the best job out there. So, yeah, Texas A&M is not a better job than Ohio State, obviously. But if he gets thrown a lot of money and he's thinking, you know what, I'm done here. I've done everything I could. Yeah, we shall see. Because really none of us can relate to the kind of pressure. Now, there's different types of pressure. Let's really boil this down to what it is. It's a football game. It doesn't matter. In the course of life, it is completely frivolous. It's entertainment. So on one hand, if you look at it like that, what does this really mean? It's a football game. You know, there are pressures in life that deal with like physical health issues, war, you know, what's going on in the Middle East. Now that's pressure, serious financial issues, you know, raising children, those sorts of things, real life stuff, pressure. But is there pressure? Yeah, he has to hear it all the time about you got to win every game. So I'm not discounting the pressure within our societal framework, the type of pressure. So yeah, why not take another job that if he goes 10-2 every year, and there's not a game that you have to win at Texas A&M to be the best or to achieve your goals. John picks Michigan 27-21. I will put my pick in the same category as everybody else's picks. Everyone's picks are meaningless. Unless I hear from somebody who is not an Ohio State fan or who is not a Michigan fan, who I respect their football knowledge, to give me a prediction, all these predictions are meaningless. And again, including mine, I will put myself in that same category. They're meaningless. Because every Michigan fan is going to pick Michigan to win, and every Ohio State fan is going to pick Ohio State to win. I will truly be impressed by the first person who comes on this show as a fan of any fan base that's in a major argument, a major debate over a meaningful debate in college football, like we had during the offseason. 1997, Michigan versus 1997, Nebraska. Of course, they split a national championship. Who was better? Who would have won a game? Who had a better resume? All of that. Of course, all the Michigan fans said there's no doubt Michigan was better. And all the Nebraska fans said, I that's just being a fan. That's not being a logical thinker. So when it comes to this game, I will put my prediction in that same category. So don't even count my prediction. Although I'm going to count it. Of course, it goes on my record, which is 184 right and 53 wrong as of yesterday's games, where we went 8-0. All right. QWERTY says Phil Parker, Iowa defensive coordinator, about to have a defensive masterclass in Indy and still lose 20-6. So just to be on the same page, everyone, we'll be back here at halftime. We will talk to all of you at halftime and jump on here for the 15 minutes while there is absolutely no play on the field. As soon as double zeros on the clock at the end of the second quarter to boom, kickoff of the third quarter, we will be right here talking with you. Also, postgame will be Best Damn Media. Will be handling Ohio State postgame on the Buckeyes channel. I will lead off our postgame here on the main channel and the Michigan channel. How about that? And then John D'Adamo is going to take over at some point. Jason says, is Phil Parker in the running for the Michigan State job? Well, Corey Bratta brought that up to us a couple of weeks ago during our Iowa show, that there is a connection between Phil Parker and Michigan State. I don't know if Phil Parker has interest in being a head coach. I would have thought that he would have already been one. The man is how old? 60, I'm guessing. So I don't know what his interest is. Obviously, he's going to make a lot more money. He's going to be the head of a program. I don't know if he wants to take that on, or if he is happy being the current Mike Hankwitz, who was a defensive coordinator for 52 years. He would be an excellent selection. I will say that. Ferris is looking for a pick 6. Honda McCord. I never understood that that nickname. I know what an Accord is, of course, but okay. But it's out there. Where are all the Ohio State fans? I know we got more Michigan fans here. I just bring in the Michigan fans. There is Yasharel, LG, Buckeyes against the world. Everybody's against the world these days. I was just out to breakfast with a friend who said that his son gets a little emotional during these games, so he may opt to go watch the game, by himself. Yes, my blood pressure, my pulse, my heart rate at this point in other years, even just a few years ago, much, much greater than it is now. Much greater than it is now. From the time I was 8 until I don't know when, this was the most important game, and it's still the most important game to me, but that is lessened about 97% from what it was at one point in my life. I believe we're very far behind on these comments. And unlike last year, I do not expect the loser of this game to make the playoff. I just don't think that the season is setting up the same way that it did last year. Chris, good to see you. The season is just not setting up the same way. Jim says, yeah, it comes with age. Yeah, it comes with perspective. But yes, I would call myself, this was one of my great weaknesses in life, very emotional, very unhinged, intense. That would be the best word. Better than emotional, better than unhinged. I just heard that concerning an individual here recently a lot. So maybe that word was just the tip of my tongue. Intense. I was way too intense and cared way too much about this game for the majority of my life. My son, I have to credit my son. He has taught me a great deal because his detachment with sports and with football in particular probably died in his early 20s, like around 20 or so. And mine took a lot longer than that. Blank name, we know is a Michigan fan. And again, concerning this game and these two programs, I basically have to take every Michigan comment by a Michigan fan and every Ohio State comment by Ohio State fans and basically negate them as being just so incredibly biased that they're pretty worthless. Ohio State bias will get them in with a loss. Oh, blank name is saying that the Ohio State bias with the committee. They are the only team that gets to back into the playoffs. I don't know how they backed into the playoffs. Explain that to me. There were other teams in the playoffs that lost a game, correct? Ohio State was just the majority of teams that have lost a game, one game, have made the playoffs, correct? We could go through each season, and the great majority of teams that lose one game make the playoffs. And in 2022, there were two teams in college football that lost one game, correct? Ohio State and TCU, correct? What am I saying that's untrue? And so, who had the best record in college football that did not win a conference? So, you had Georgia undefeated, Michigan undefeated. Then you had TCU with one loss, you had Ohio State with one loss, and every other team in college football lost two games. So, who was supposed to be in the playoffs? Ohio State also could have been selected. You talk about bias for Ohio State. There's been bias against Ohio State, or actually, if we're going to think about it and be reasonable and be logical, we understand there was no bias for Ohio State or against Ohio State. There was a decision to be made. And so there was bias for Ohio State in 2016, and there was bias for Ohio State in 2022. But was Ohio State one of the four best teams in 2015? Yes. They're supposed to select the four best teams, right? Ohio State was one of the four best teams in 2015. They didn't get selected. They were a Big Ten champion of what was arguably the best conference and had the credentials with top 15 wins to go in 2017 and 2018 and 2021. Who was better in 2021, Cincinnati or Ohio State? So they could have been selected a whole bunch of other times. So blank name, basically what I'm telling you is that's a myth. I've given you more examples of them being left out of the playoffs with credentials to make the playoffs than them being selected to the playoffs without having enough credentials. So So basically, as you guys have come to discover, I don't let people off the hook making dumb comments. Michigan versus the world. Again, this comes from the Michigan fan who can't speak to the subject intelligently. I'll take a 2-loss champion over an Ohio State team that took a beatdown. Well, that's not real bright. Well, let's not. I don't want to be abusive to my audience there, Stephen, but appreciate everybody being here. And again, it's being a fan. So it's all allowed. All right, I got to get to my picks because I let everyone know that I did not release my predictions as I typically do on Patreon and as a YouTube channel member. We would love for all of you to be YouTube channel members here at the Voice of College Football. And you can do that very easily. You're already here. So you get Steve Merrill's under the radar selection. He's 20-5 against the spread, and he selected another great one for this week that's got about an 80-some% chance of being another winner. And I believe that game kicks off at 3:30 Eastern time. Yes, so Steve Merrill's under the radar selection. Then you get all my predictions, which I am after going 8-0 yesterday and 5-3 against the spread. I'm at like just under 80% money line and 58% against the spread. And I could easily increase that record against the spread if I limited my number of picks. I pick like 20 some games a week. And so we're going to do that right now. I am going to, well, let's take this super chat here. Matthew Miller, I'm hoping you respect my football knowledge. I have Michigan 27-24. Honestly, it comes down to JJ versus McCord. Good luck, Mark. There we go. Matthew, thank you so much for the contribution. Matthew hosts our Texas postgame and our Bleeding Burnt Nation show every Wednesday night. So join Matthew right here. Thank you for the contribution, Matthew. And of course, I respect your football knowledge. I'm not saying that Ohio State fans don't have football knowledge and Michigan fans don't have football knowledge. What I'm saying is I have yet to hear any Ohio State fans or Michigan fans be able to speak on the subject of these two programs, these two teams, and this game and take out their bias. So they're kind of worthless statements. All right, I got to go through my predictions. And so maybe I stated that toward a few Michigan and Ohio State fans a little harshly. So forgive me for that. You're all awesome. And if you weren't here, then I wouldn't be doing this. Chris thinks the matchup is a toss-up, and I do as well. There's just... and I didn't think that through the course of the season, most of the season. I thought, well, if you join me for my preseason predictions, and let's keep track of the time here. What do we got? Okay, we're good. Preseason predictions, I said that Michigan was a better football team. At the time that I made my preseason predictions, just a couple days before the season started, that Michigan, for all these reasons, I went through the analysis, is a better football team than Ohio State right now. But I am anticipating pretty much everything that we've seen. So I get a lot of predictions wrong, just like anybody else. And I make a lot of projections that don't come true, just like anybody else. But we shall see in 3 hours if this comes to pass. But I had projected Ohio State's trajectory would take off. That Jim Knowles' defense, running game, McCord's development, all would go in an arc. They would get better and better and better and better and better and better. And so far, that's played out. I do believe that in whatever order, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Michigan are the best teams in the country. And then I think Oregon and Texas are there, and then Florida State and Washington. All right. See, these are the kind of responses that I find hilarious. Michigan looks focused. Yes, Matthew knows his football. Mike is stating the truth right there. And again, I try to take myself out of my own fandom to rank these rivalries, which we will do. We'll have to do that this offseason. But man, this is just, it's unmatched. It is unmatched. It's a national rivalry. When I lived and worked in Mississippi and covered the SEC for 7 years, and during that time, the games were not of this magnitude, 11-0 versus 11-0. One or the other was down. Usually it was Michigan was down, but that was during the course of the John Cooper, and Michigan was pulling off upsets. And I regularly ran into people, media in Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, all throughout the South. And when it was around rivalry weekend, yes, we would talk about whatever rivalry we were covering, whatever was going on in the SEC that weekend, the Iron Bowl, the Egg Bowl. And then you know what? Other game would come up. The only other game that would come up among media talking was Ohio State and Michigan in the South. All right, I got to make my picks. So, Mike, I completely agree with you. And Mike, again, let's embrace this game, regardless of who you're rooting for and how it turns out. And the Bear here is picking Michigan to cover. So I don't know what his record is. I don't know if he's any good at this. I know he's got a lot of stats in his head, so I've always admired that, but I don't know if he picks these games rather well. I'm amazed. You know, a lot of these famous columnists, like somebody brought up in the chat, Bruce Feldman, and trying to think of the other, like Ross Dellinger, a lot of guys that I don't read college football information out there, so I'm not familiar with their work to either back them up to say they're amazing in what they do. I assume that they're really good at what they do because of what they've achieved and the jobs that they hold. But I come across their predictions, and none of them, I can't come across any of these guys that can predict football games. They're terrible at it. Horrible. Like I came across Feldman's picks, and I don't want to state who the other guy was because I don't remember. So I don't want to throw somebody under the bus who doesn't deserve this comment. But there were like 3 famous college football writers that have their columns go together. And I came across this last week, and they had their predictions for the week and their records for the season. And they all could have done better if they were throwing darts at a dartboard. They were all under 50%. Like, I don't even know how you do that. Like, how you could be paying attention to the sport and be that bad at predicting football games. So that said, with my record of 133 and 102 against the spread and 186 and 53 against the money line, let's go through my picks today. All right. Kentucky, Louisville. We've got Louisville at home at 10-1. Of course, they still have playoff aspirations. At least they should. If the process is fair and equitable, they should be in the college football playoff hunt. They're a 7.5-point favorite against Kentucky. Well, I do think Louisville is just playing better football. Kentucky is going to keep it close enough. So Louisville wins, Kentucky plus 7.5. Next up, let's see. Texas A&M LSU. This is a tough one to call. Texas A&M's playing with a backup quarterback, really a third-string quarterback. Of course, lost their coach. Played their first game with their interim coach, Elijah Robinson, last week, and played Abilene Christian. LSU's also coming off a scrimmage as well against Georgia State. They won by 42 points. I am going to trust Texas A&M's talent to be up for this game and ready to go, and that they'll put together a nice little game plan, and maybe there's some backdoor cover opportunity there. LSU defeats Texas A&M, but give me Texas A&M and 13.5. All right, next up. Colorado and Utah. Utah starting a backup quarterback, which I believe has dropped this line slightly. And when I say backup quarterback, I mean like a four-string quarterback. They've already gone through Cam Rising, of course, never started the season. Bryson Barnes. The other quarterback, I can't think of his name. Nate Johnson. I think they're going to a fourth-string quarterback as Utah. But Shedeur Sanders has been sick this week. He'll probably play. Utah's at home against Colorado. I'm going to take Utah minus 20. Utah minus 20. Huge game, by the way, in the Mountain West. San Jose State and UNLV. The winner goes to the conference championship game. Minnesota and Wisconsin. I shouldn't even pick this game. It's a non-top 25 game, but I just feel like throwing it out there. I have confidence Wisconsin's going to win this game, more so because I just believe Minnesota's a bad football team. Wisconsin is probably having its worst season in over 20 years, and they're still better than Minnesota. Minnesota's terrible. So even with the backup quarterback, even with Braylon Allen ailing, I'm going to take Wisconsin, and they'll cover the 2.5 on the road. Virginia Tech, little rivalry going on there. Maryland Rutgers. Should I even touch Vandy in Tennessee? By the way, I'm giving you folks 60% winners. That's what the track record says. Let's go to Arizona State. Arizona State's at home. Arizona is just the hottest team in college football, at least compared to what we expected them to be. They have been so good. And they can't go to the Pac-12 championship game. That was out there as a possibility entering the weekend, but Oregon State could not pull off the upset against Oregon. I just think, boy, Arizona, they don't win. They don't beat anyone by that much, do they? They win a lot of close games. I don't know. Arizona State's not a good football team. I don't think the home field advantage means much of anything here. Give me Arizona to cover 12.5. Okay, Bama and Auburn. I don't like taking all these favorites to cover, especially on the road, but I'm going to do it again. Bama, man, Auburn, they can't throw the ball. Their pass game is awful. It's Iowa awful. Man, Bama, I think Auburn's going to show up. They're going to play hard. There's something different about Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's one of the toughest places to play in college football. Nick Saban, I believe, is only 4-4 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Alabama covers 13.5, though. But it's going to be a competitive game. Oklahoma State and BYU. BYU's got a terrible defense. And Oklahoma State, though, Alan Bowman throws a few to the other team. And Oklahoma State is playing for, you would think, they've got all the incentive in the world. They win, and they're going to the Big 12 championship game. They are going to complete a remarkable run. This is one of the undervalued stories in college football this year is Oklahoma State and what they've done. But give me BYU and 17.5. Oklahoma State wins the game, but give me BYU and 17.5 points. Northwestern Illinois, Brett Bielema and his crew, they need to win to get to a bowl game. Remarkably, Coach of the Year, David Braun in the Big Ten. Got to be Coach of the Year. Delivers 6 wins. They could be 7-5. Northwestern. Wow. Crazy. All right, Washington State. Washington has been, they've been kind of dragging along. They haven't been overly impressive. Give me 15.5. Washington wins. They stay undefeated. They get to the Pac-12 championship game. Of course, they're already there, but they go in undefeated. Washington State, Cam Ward, give me 15.5 points. Jake Dickert, going to bring the guys in ready to play the Apple Cup. Final Apple Cup as Pac-12 members. Florida State, this line is a bit odd. I could understand this line if Florida still had Graham Mertz at quarterback, but we've got 2 backup quarterbacks playing an important game in Gainesville. Billy Napier, I don't believe, is going to get fired, even though a lot of people would like to see him fired, a lot of Gator fans. But he's going to complete a 5-7 year, most likely. It's a 6.5 point favorite, though. So that's not a substantial wide margin. So this would not be some colossal upset, considering one team's 5-6 and the other is 11-0. Tate Rodemaker at quarterback for Florida State in place of Jordan Travis, going on the road at Florida. Man, taking a road favorite with a backup quarterback. But then again, the Gators playing with a backup quarterback. If it were a half point more, I would think about taking the Gators, but I'm going to take Florida State. It's under a touchdown at 6.5. Florida State covers on the road against Florida. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has somehow, Brent Key has done a remarkable job to just kind of piece together, duct tape together a 6-5 record. Georgia blows them out. Georgia is going to blow them out. Lay the 23.5. Georgia wins. Clemson, South Carolina. I like Clemson. Again, I'm taking another road favorite. Lay the 7.5. Too much Clemson defense. They're just better than South Carolina by a decent margin. Lay the 7.5. Take Clemson. North Carolina State. I'm going to take North Carolina State at home to win the game. So give me the 2.5. Give me the 2.5. NC State wins. Oh, man, we've got a 10.5 point spread in Manhattan, Kansas. Wildcats that big of a favorite against Iowa State. I'm not buying it. I like Kansas State to win the game. Take the Wildcats to win the game, but take 10.5. Iowa State 10.5. Give it to me. And all right, that brings us to the game. Here we go. A lot of pressure on Ryan Day, a lot of pressure on Kyle McCord. Michigan's won this series. They've taken it over. They have taken it, grabbed it, wrestled it away from Ohio State, and they own the Big Ten. They're at home. This all sets up as a Michigan victory. Better quarterback, more dynamic quarterback, proven, experienced quarterback. Not necessarily has it proven to be better line play this year currently, but better line play, tougher, more physical up front has Michigan been on both sides of the line of scrimmage the last 2 years. Ohio State is still the more talented team. Not even the most ardent Michigan fan could debate that. Ohio State has probably more premium NFL players on this roster than maybe any team in the country. This comes down to when you talk about keys to a game, you can't go to one thing, two things, three things, but we could talk about 15 aspects of this game that are key, and we have. Check out the coverage over the course of a week. We have covered this game for the last week nonstop. I do believe that Ohio State's run game is vastly improved, and TreVeyon Henderson is vastly better than the same running back that showed up in Ann Arbor 2 years ago and had one big run, but generally got pushed around, especially in short yardage. I think that, yes, the pass protection for Kyle McCord is crucial for both quarterbacks. It's always crucial. Quarterbacks don't win laying on their backs. But for J.J. McCarthy, there's escapability. For Kyle McCord, there's much less. Michigan's got a pretty severe advantage in this game from a number of aspects. Stylistically, they're at home. They've got to be confident. They've got to be what Ohio State was 4 or 5 years ago against them. Although the big difference is those Michigan teams that Ohio State was beating up on were nowhere close to being as good as this Ohio State team. Michigan, the last 2 years, to their credit, have defeated one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country by double digits. Ohio State was largely beating top 15 teams in the country under Urban Meyer and the first year under Ryan Day. When it comes down to this, I believe it's going to be, I believe this Ohio State defense is lights out. And so for 2 different reasons, and I said a few minutes ago, don't take any stock in my prediction, 0. Take all the stock in the predictions I just made because my 40-year track record says that they are in the green by a ton. But on this prediction, this is a fan predicting this, but I believe I have two points to make. One being that the Ohio State running game is vastly improved, and they've got a home run hitter. And number 2, that their defense is lights out, arguably the best defense in the country. I believe that we have 2 of the 3 or 4 best defenses in the country in this game. And then I'll just say this season is played out from a trajectory of Ohio State's play exactly the way I forecasted it. So why would I not stay with what I originally forecasted? Ohio State 24, Michigan 21. Ohio State wins 24-21. All right, folks. It is that time.
Thanks for being here. We'll see you at halftime. Enjoy the first half. See you in an hour and a half. Double zeros on the clock at halftime. We will see you then. Appreciate you being here.